Okay, friends, good morning. Thank you for joining us for today's class, for today's Torah discussion. Can you change your spouse? You're going through a rough patch in your marriage, or let's not get personal. You know somebody going through a rough patch in their marriage, and you're wondering, how can you get your spouse to change? How can you get your wife to change? How can you get your husband to change? Because things are just not working. Can you get your spouse to change? The answer might surprise you, but the answer is yes. You can actually get somebody else to change. But in order to get them to change, you got to change. And it actually starts with changing how you see them. There's a great line I heard from, in the name of Rabbi Twersky, of blessed memory. He said that if you win an argument with your spouse, remember that you're married to a loser. We love to change people. We love to be right. And when we shift our mindset and change how we see people, we'll actually see positive changes in our life. A client came to this therapist and said, I'm trying to get my wife or husband or whoever it was to change. And a lot of therapists were saying, sorry, you can't get somebody else to change. Let's start with you. The therapist went along with it. The therapist said, if your spouse were to change, what type of changes would you want to see? And he started describing the changes he wanted to see in detail. And the therapist then said, if those changes happened, what changes would take place within you? The person started describing the changes that then would take place within this person. The therapist then proceeded to describe the value in this person initiating the change, because when we make changes within ourselves, and especially in how we see other people, we'll actually see change. When we impose values on people, values of change on people, we're met with resistance. When we notice value within people, we're going to see positive change. But in order to do that, we have to change. We have to start looking for positivity, and we have to start being in a more positive mindset. I would like to start off with a quote from the Gemara, and you should see it on your screen over here, from Tainus, Hey Omid Beis, 5b. I'll read it in the Hebrew and then I'll translate. It says, Yaakov Avinu loy meis. Yaakov, our patriarch, didn't die. Amar le. This was Rabbi Yochanan who had cited this. So the sages replied back to him, what do you mean Yaakov Avinu didn't die? V'chi bichte seftehu sefdaina. We eulogized him already. V'chanat fuchatanya. We embalmed him already. Which, how you can embalm him is a separate discussion for a separate time. Ukavaru kabaraya. We've buried him. We know where he's buried. He's buried in Hebron. What do you mean he didn't die? Amar le. The response was, Mikra ani dairish. Although physically we saw him pass away, but I'm not going by what I see, I'm going by what the Pasuk tells us. Shnei Amar, the Pasuk says, Ve'ata altira avdi Yaakov, my servant of Yaakov, now do not fear. Va'al tachas Yisrael, because nothing will replace the Jewish people. Ki hinini Mashiacha, the prophets say, I will save you merachok, from a distance. Ve'es zar'acha, and from your children, me'eretz shivim, from a land of captivity. The Torah tells us that the children of Israel will continue to be saved and will continue to thrive. Then the Gemara continues, Ma keshul Zarei. So Yaakov is compared to his children, because Ma'azare b'chayim, af hu b'chayim. Just as his children are alive, he is alive. Although physically we saw that Yaakov had died, but if his children live on, carry on those values, Yaakov is essentially still alive. Which begs the question, you look around and you see that there are many people who are not following the values of Yaakov, who are not keeping in line with Jewish tradition, who aren't following our sacred way of living the way they should be as Jews. So has Yaakov now died because Jews aren't following Judaism? And the answer is no. Because if we look at another Jew and we see he's not alive or she's not alive as a Jew should be, and that's impacting the life and legacy of Yaakov. The problem doesn't actually start with them, or the solution doesn't start with them. The solution starts with us. If we see another Jew as spiritually dead, and therefore think Yaakov has died, the problem is not them, the solution is not them, the solution is us. We have to change the lenses by which we see other people. And when we judge people by what they should or shouldn't be doing, that's how we start assessing people, by their behavior, by what we see. We may be in for disappointment, but it's also a dishonest way of looking at people because we don't really understand or know their circumstances or the value of behavior. What we have to do is look at who people are. This person is inherently a Jew. This person is inherently connected to the legacy of Yaakov. And I have to not look for problems and say, hey, this isn't what they're doing. I have to look for evidence of that. The Torah says that the children of Yaakov are alive, and therefore Yaakov is alive. So for me to say, well, my eyes tell me that they're not alive, that they're not thriving as Jews, so maybe that does impact Yaakov. Well, then maybe the problem is not the Torah being wrong. Maybe the problem is my vision being off. Maybe I'm looking at people in a negative light. Maybe I have to change the way I see people and not take everything I see for granted and assume that because I interpret it this way, this must be the case. I actually have to open my eyes and look at people from a better light. And this is true in relationships as well. Look at your relationship as if it's thriving. Your relationship is alive. Your relationship is there. Well, I don't see it that way. Okay, then I have to change the way I see things. I have to open my eyes to see positivity, to see goodness. And I have to look for evidence of that goodness. And when I look for evidence of that goodness, I am presupposing that that goodness is there, that I actually believe in it. I want to share with you an interesting midrash from Bereshis Rabbah. The Midrash Rabbah says, I'm going to read and translate it, and again, you should see this on your screen over here. Rabbi Abahu, Rabbi Chia Rabbah. Rabbi Abahu Amar, Rabbi Abahu said, Metchilas briyasei shel ha'olam, at the beginning of the creation of the world, Tzafa HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'ma'aseihin shel tzadikim u'ma'aseihin shel reshaim. God looked at the behavior of the righteous. He looked at the behavior of the wicked. He looked at both of them. He assessed both of them. That's why it says in the verse in Psalms, Ki yodeya Hashem derech tzadikim v'derech reshaim tovet. God knows the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked that will ultimately be lost. V'ha'aretz haisa sahu v'vayu. At the beginning of creation, the world was empty and desolate. Elu ma'asehim shel reshaim. That refers to the behavior of the wicked, the desolateness that existed in the world. And then what did God do in this world of desolateness, this world of emptiness? Vayomer Eloi kim yihi or. God said, let there be light. He filled it with light. And the Midrash says, Elu ma'asehim shel tzadikim. That refers to the actions, to the behavior of the righteous. So you had this world filled with emptiness. That's the world filled with the behavior of the wicked. God filled it with light. He filled it with the actions of the righteous. But I'm not sure, says the Midrash, which one God prefers. Does he prefer the behavior of the righteous or prefers the behavior of the wicked? But since the pasuk says, God saw the light and he saw that it was good. I understand that he prefers the behavior of the righteous. He doesn't prefer the behavior of the wicked. So God creates this world of righteousness and of wickedness, of desolateness and of light. I don't know which God prefers until God said that he saw the light and he saw that that was good. Okay, we now know that God prefers righteousness. That's what the Midrash says. And many of the commentaries grapple with what this Midrash is trying to convey. God doesn't know what's better. Is righteousness better or is wickedness better? God has no idea. So different commentaries explain this and unpack this from different angles. Some commentaries explain that God might prefer the wickedness because they have the opportunity to do teshuvah and connect even better. But ultimately, God prefers those who are initially innocent. Some say that it's referring to the definition of good and bad. We don't know which one is ultimately good and bad. Is righteousness good or is wickedness good? What makes something right and wrong other than God's decision? Okay, these are the different angles that commentaries take. But I want to share with you what the Kedushas Levi says, what Reb Levi Yitzchak Bartichev says. Here's what he says. I'm going to read the text inside. He said that there's the Maaseihem Shel Tzadikim, the behavior of the righteous. There's the behavior of the wicked. And it's unclear which God prefers. And then we ultimately conclude God prefers the behavior of the righteous. So Reb Levi Yitzchak Bardichev has a different spin on what the behavior of the righteous or behavior of the wicked is referring to. It's actually referring to communication styles. Maseihem shel tzadikim, when we see the behavior of the righteous, it's referring to those where shemidasam rak toiv, their behavior or their character is good. Where they bring people close. And even though it's reproving, but they do it in a way where it's imrei noyam hamiskavlim al halev, where they do it in a way where it's pleasant, where it's emotionally meaningful, where they're talking to the hearts of people and not pushing them away, not just trying to shut them down, but actually bring them in. And from that perspective, from that approach, shiyazev rasha darkai, the wicked people end up leaving their paths. It's effective. But then you have Maaseihem Shel Rishaim. Then you have the behavior of the wicked. And what's the behavior of the wicked? We don't mean wicked behavior. But Pirush, Lo yishahar Rishaim gufa mishabehem, ein lehem chayfetz. The Midrash does not mean that God doesn't desire the wicked themselves. Rak Maaseihem Shelahem. God doesn't appreciate the behavior of the wicked behavior. Which means, what's wicked behavior? Shemaisehem kas vesina, anger, hatred. And when you're trying to be mekayrev somebody, you're trying to come close with somebody or bring them close to you in a relationship or bring them close into Judaism, doing it with anger or hatred, as a wicked person might do, God doesn't appreciate that. Vehem poyalim ra'a bazeh. There's bad, the effect of that is bad. The impact on that is negative. God sees them. And He doesn't like that. Trying to shut the wicked down, trying to throw them to the ground, trying to lower them to the dust of the earth and belittle them, and hope that through that they're going to regret their behavior. These are two different approaches in trying to bring people closer to you in relationships. Trying to highlight who they are at their core, as a righteous person might do, or trying to highlight the negativity that they should leave, as a wicked person, a wicked behavior might do. And it's unclear which one God prefers. They're both two methods of communication. These two midos in communication, tzaddik or rasha, righteous or wicked, it's not very clear. Which one does God want? Until God tells us. Nevertheless, God prefers the behavior of the righteous. You should bring close the entire world to serving God al yedei divrei noyam, in a way that's pleasant. V'yashuv libam la'avodasam, and return their hearts, talk to their heart in making them close. V'loi al yedei kas, but not through anger. Lazeh amar, and that's why God says in the Torah, Vayar Elokim ha'or ki toiv, God saw that light was good. And the Midrash says that's referring to Maaseihem Shel Tzadikim, that's referring to the behavior of the righteous. Lihis naheg b'toiv, where they conduct themselves in a way that's positive. V'amar hakasu, hatam, ki toiv, it's good. Be like a righteous person, be pleasant, be kind. That's a good thing, that's effective. Ki darkoi umidasei shel Hashem yisparechu toiv v'chefetz, shakol yikravu elav ha'idei toiv. You know why that's good? Because God is good. That's what God does. God is kind. God is patient. When we replicate God, we reflect God in His communication style, we actually have positive effects. The Torah says that God's ways are ways that are pleasant. When we're pleasant in how we treat people, when we're pleasant in how we approach people, we actually see positive change, and that's something God appreciates. And the reason why it's effective is because in order to be pleasant in trying to bring somebody close to you or close to your community or whatever it may be, and this is certainly true in marriage and in relationships, in order to be more pleasant in a relationship, you can't impose values on people. You have to see their value. Yeah, and if you didn't see their value, you wouldn't want a relationship with them. So the fact that you want a relationship with them, the fact that you want to bring them into your community, the fact that you want to reconnect with your spouse means you see value in them. You see value in that relationship. So focus on the value that you see, not the problems that are getting in the way of that value. Okay, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.